Well, friends, an aspiring day one dictator is now a day one defendant as Donald Trump's first criminal trial gets underway. Let's talk about that because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So friends, my main takeaway from day one of Donald Trump's first criminal trial. So my overarching thought when I woke up this morning as Donald Trump's trial was set to begin was this. Today, we take an important first step toward fulfilling the long dormant American promise that no one is above the law. Yes, we have a long way to go to make that promise a reality, but the fact that a former president of the United States will be tried for his election interference crimes matters. Now, friends, let's briefly start with some of today's reporting, and then I want to take on three developments in court today and try to translate them from legalese to English. But I hope you'll forgive me if we start with a little bit of the atmospherics of today's trial proceedings. This from the New York Times. A weary Trump appears to doze off in courtroom ahead of criminal trial. And that article begins, former President Donald Trump seemed alternately irritated and exhausted Monday morning as his lawyers and prosecutors hashed out pretrial motions before jury selection in his criminal case. Even as a judge was hearing arguments on last-minute issues in a criminal case that centers on salacious allegations and threatens to upend his bid for the presidency, Mr. Trump appeared to nod off a few times, his mouth going slack and his head drooping onto his chest. The former president's lead lawyer, Todd Blanche, passed him notes for several minutes before Mr. Trump appeared to jolt awake and notice them. At other times, Mr. Trump whispered and exchanged notes with Mr. Blanche. He sat motionless while his own words from the infamous Access Hollywood tape, on which he bragged about grabbing women's genitals, were read from a transcript by a prosecutor. At times, Mr. Trump's emotions were characteristically on display. He smirked and scoffed and appeared frustrated when the judge in the case, Juan Merchan, did not immediately agree that he could miss court to attend the graduation of his youngest son, Barron. But when Justice Merchan warned that Mr. Trump could be ejected or thrown in jail if he disrupts the proceedings, the former president indicated that he understood. The only time Mr. Trump showed a flash of humor was when he laughed at one of his own social media posts, which attacked former fixer Michael Cohen, who is expected to be the prosecution's central witness. You know, Donald, you're kind of fighting for your freedom here. Seems like the least you could do is stay awake. You know, friend, old drowsy defendant Donald, his influence really is waning, and that could actually be seen even before court started today. Remember how a few days ago, Donald Trump sent out a command to his loyal troops, his foot soldiers? He said, on Monday, all hell will break loose in Manhattan. Do you understand? You get what I'm telling you to do? All hell will break loose on Monday in Manhattan outside that courtroom. I mean, that wasn't an observation. It wasn't a rumination. It wasn't a warning. It was a command. It was a directive, just like stand back and stand by and fight like hell or you won't have a country anymore. Now march to the Capitol and stop the certification, stop the steal. There will be a bloodbath if I'm not elected, right? And today, the command he sent out regarding what his troops should do today, Monday, all hell will break loose. You understand what I'm telling you? And look at what it looked like outside the courtroom this morning before court started. Kind of looks more like all accountability was breaking loose. And that carried into the courtroom. You know, I don't know that I've ever seen a defense team lose so much, lose so consistently. And the losing continued this morning in court ruling after court ruling before they brought the jury in. There were some motions that had to be cleaned up, that had to be ruled on. Donald Trump wanted to keep Michael Cohen off the stand. No, Michael Cohen will be testifying. Donald Trump said Stormy Daniels can't testify. Stormy Daniels will be testifying. Well, not Karen McDougal. Yes, she will be testifying. Even the one thing that seemed like a win, right? Trump's lawyers argued the jury shouldn't get to see the Access Hollywood tape. You know the one, because they said it would be so wildly prejudicial because they would see Donald Trump actually talking about who he really is and what he really does, and it's not really relevant to the hush money payments. The judge had ruled that, okay, I'm not going to let the jury see the Access Hollywood tape. Sounds like a win for the defense, right? Well, today, the judge ruled that an email containing Donald Trump's statement in its entirety from the Access Hollywood tape is admissible. So the jurors may not get to see Donald Trump announcing what he does to women because he's a star and they let him do it, but they will read it and they will see what Donald Trump says he does to women. So even that was a loss. Okay, friends, now let's take on three of the developments that unfolded in court this morning, actually before the jurors were brought into the courtroom after the lunch break. The first one is what's called the Parker warnings. What are the Parker warnings? Well, every jurisdiction has its own name for certain legal principles or procedures, and usually that name comes from the case in which the appellate court decided a certain legal issue that then became kind of part of the ordinary procedure in a criminal case. Let me give you a perfect example. You all know the Miranda warnings, right? You have a right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have a right to an attorney. If you can't afford an attorney, one will be appointed to you free of charge, etc. Why do we call those the Miranda warnings? Because the case in which the Supreme Court decided that those warnings are required involved a defendant named Miranda. So they are forever known as the Miranda warnings. And in New York State Court, one of the warnings that a judge gives the defendant is referred to as the Parker warnings. So this is what Judge Merchan told Donald Trump, warned him of, put Donald Trump on notice of today. You have the right to be present during the trial and to assist your attorneys. Do you understand? Trump, yes. Judge Merchan, if you disrupt the proceedings, you can be excluded from the courtroom and committed to jail based on your conduct, and the trial will continue on in your absence. Do you understand? Trump, I do. Judge Merchan, if you do not show up, there will be an arrest. Do you understand? Trump, I do. So defendant Donald was given his Parker warnings. But, I mean, what are the chances he'll act up and disrupt the proceedings? Another development. At one point, Donald Trump was getting up and walking up to the bench while his lawyers and the prosecutors were having a discussion with the judge. And I had some people ask, wait, is that usual? Does the defendant get to walk up to the bench and participate and listen to what's going on up there? And the answer is yes, absolutely. Why? Because a defendant has a right to be present at and privy to every hearing in his case. Let me tell you how we do it in the courts of D.C. Ordinarily, when the prosecutor and the defense attorney go up to the bench because there's something that's going to be discussed, not exactly privately, but such that the audience can't hear it, or if there's a jury in the box, the jury can't hear it. They may be discussing a legal issue that the jury should not be privy to. What we do in D.C. is the defense